by honoring God with your investments. Now here's your host, Shana Burt.
Good Friday morning. It is Rapid Fire Friday here at Financial Issues. It is Friday, May the 10th, 2024, and our phone lines are open, 610-363-1110. So we're going to be talking all about financial issues today, the financial issues that are happening in the world around us and the markets and the economies, and our own personal financial issues and how to integrate the things that are happening in the world with a biblical worldview. So if you've got questions, get your calls queued up now. Our stewardship verse today comes from 1 Timothy 6:8. If we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. So that is a declaration that we want to encourage you to adopt here at Financial Issues.
Amen.
Well, at Financial Issues, we help you to stay in the know about the financial issues of the day. We keep you abreast of what's happening in the economy and the markets and help you understand how that impacts your own personal financial issues. My takeaways from the week ending May the 10th, and we are just a little bit barely into May the 10th yet, but so far it's been a pretty quiet week as far as economic data goes. We got a lot of labor data last week. We're going to get a lot of inflation data next week. But for this week, let's take a look at what's been happening. We got the weekly unemployment number that did come out yesterday. The U.S. Department of Labor reported that the number of people claiming unemployment benefits in the U.S. surged by 22,000 to 231,000 for the week ending May the 4th. Now, that is the highest weekly number that we've seen since August of 2023, and it's sharply above what was expected at 210. So for the past 4 consecutive weeks, the unemployment numbers that have been reported were upside surprises. And since February the 2nd, initial jobless claims have remained in an extremely tight range of between 208 and 213,000, with the exception of just one of the reports around the President's Day holiday. So we've seen the weekly unemployment numbers come in between 208 and 213. This week, 231. So there was no real holiday or seasonal adjustment change that were noted to explain away the differences, maybe except for one. This confirms, though, what I've been saying about a loosening labor market. The 4-week moving average for initial claims, which takes away the week-to-week volatility, because, we could see this one week as an anomaly. New York was one of the regions that posted the sharpest increases in the unemployment for that week. And they have something a little bit different than around the country. They allow their public school workers to apply for benefits during winter and spring breaks. So that could be a reason for the increase, because New York was responsible for the biggest part of the increase. But I guess we'll have to wait till next week to see. Now, the 4-week moving average for initial claims, which removes that week-to-week volatility, jumped also by 4,750 to 215,000. So in the 20 years, to put all this in perspective, the 20 years before COVID, because this seems to be kind of the bookmark now from where we compare things, pre-COVID, post-COVID, the weekly initial applications had averaged about 345,000. So we're still pretty well below that, and continuing claims averaged roughly 2.9 million. So we're still below that, and I guess you could say we still have a fairly strong labor market, but we are seeing cracks in the labor market. In response to those unemployment claims, the 2-year Treasury fell by 3 basis points, as did the 10-year yield, indicating, and what this indicates is that we're seeing an increase in demand for the quote-unquote safety of treasuries, which is, in my opinion, becoming less and less safe. Increased demand for these treasuries means that the prices increase. And bond prices and yields have an inverse relationship. So when bond prices rise, the yield goes down. That's what we saw there. The 30-year mortgage, good news, a little bit of good news there. It ticked down by 13 basis points from the previous week, but it's still over 7%. Earnings season has continued. The earnings scorecard, now this is a little bit with a little bit of a lag. We have had some earnings this week, but the most recent number that I could find was for through the end of last week. And through the end of last week, 80% of S&P 500 companies have already reported. So we're winding down earnings season now. We're just going to have, a minority trickle in through probably the end of this month. And the results so far are that 77% of S&P companies have reported positive earnings that were a surprise. They weren't expecting, they reported better than expected earnings. 61% of the S&P companies that have already reported positive revenue surprises. So there's difference between earnings and revenues. Revenue is the top line. Earnings is the bottom line. Earnings growth for first quarter 2024, the blended year-over-year growth rate looks to be coming in at about 5%. So if 5%, that means that companies are growing their earnings 5%. Over the previous quarter, it will mark the highest year-over-year earnings growth rate reported by the index since the second quarter of 2022. And that would be much better than what was expected. 3.4% growth was expected. It looks like we're coming in at about 5%. So how is the market valuing all of this? Well, the market, as you may have heard, the market is in somewhat of an overvalued state if you're looking at PEs. The 12-month forward PE ratio for the S&P 500 is just a tick under 20. The 5-year average is just a tick over 19, and the 10-year average is 17.8. So bottom line, the market is baking in a lot of good news, all of the good news that we've been hearing about earnings, all of these expectations about what AI is going to do. And I said at the beginning of earnings season this year, just several weeks ago, that it is going to take extraordinary guidance, forward guidance, to keep prices up at the current valuations. A bright future, like I said, is already priced in here. So companies that, and here's the supporting data, this was just the first indication that we saw the first earnings out of the box. We were seeing this trend unfold. And now where we are with the majority of companies reporting, companies that beat earnings estimates saw their stock prices rise less than the historical average. So usually beats make share prices rise. Remember, I always say long term, what makes the stock prices and the stock markets go up is earnings. Companies that missed earnings have seen their stocks punished worse than usual, too. So speaking of earnings season, Planet Fitness, which is not on our list, it's of course not biblically responsible, falls after reeling in full year guidance. So the woke national fitness firm lowered its outlook for the full year, citing several headwinds. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the next segment, but it has to do with an incident that happened there with their transgender policy. More reason to show exactly why financial issues does exist in the first place. What's coming next week? Well, consumer sentiment comes out later today. We'll pick that up next week. Inflation reports and retail sales. So now that you're in the know about the recent and upcoming financial issues, we hope that you will learn more about how we help you integrate those issues into your own stewardship. Find out more about how we can help you defund darkness with our biblically responsible investment strategy at financialissues.org. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Financial Issues right after this break.
Throughout the month of May, FISM is partnering with Preborn to fund the light by providing 100 ultrasound machines to pro-life centers around the country. Now, how can you contribute? Well, for as little as $28, you can provide an ultrasound scan to an abortion-minded woman in crisis. And when that woman hears the heartbeat of her baby, she will choose life. Get this, 90% of the time. It's remarkable. And guess what? With the help of a donor match, for every 200 scans donated, that's for a net value of $5,600, Preborn Ministries will be gifted an ultrasound machine to place at a clinic in need. Each machine has the potential to impact hundreds of thousands of mothers' choices. Preborn also offers additional support to mothers in need and presents the gospel to every mother who comes into their clinics, knowing that salvation is the greatest gift that can be given to a mother and her child. So go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. It's Rapid Fire Friday here. And right before the break, we were talking about earnings season. And, you know, once a quarter, companies come out and they report their earnings so that public investors can know whether those companies are good investments or not. One of the reasons that we exist here at Financial Issues is to defund darkness. So many things are happening with corporate America, mostly because they've had a lot of pressure put on them to go woke. And then some companies just choose this path. Others do it reluctantly to keep from getting in the bad graces of some of the minority groups like the LGBT community and things like that. So Planet Fitness recently had an incident. There was a woman that took a picture of a man shaving in the woman's bathroom. She reported him, and she got kicked out.
Did she really, Shana?
Yeah, that's what the news says, and that's what she says. She had a really good response, by the way. But anyway, the stock lost, or the company lost $400 million in a 5-day period following that incident. And you know, it's just, we don't want to be involved in that. We don't want to. Yeah. If you own Planet Fitness, then you're allowing the owner, the management of that company to make these kind of decisions. You're supporting an agenda that, as a Christian, you don't agree with. So we encourage you to defund darkness, become a partner of Financial Issues, and find stocks that are not supporting this garbage. Well, amen. Speaking of defunding darkness, the other part of our mission is to fund the light. And what that means is that we encourage you to be a joyful and generous giver. The scriptures talk a lot about money and how to handle it and what to do with it and how we can honor God with it. We decide to put Christ first in our portfolios by not funding any of the garbage that grieves the heart of the Lord. But we take that a step further, and we encourage you to fund the light. And, you know, what God showed me about funding the light when I first heard about biblically responsible investing and really started to pray about all of this is that, you know, money in and of itself is not evil. It's the love of money that is the root of all kinds of evil. Money is just a neutral medium. It's what makes the world go round. It's how we put gas in our tanks and food in our bellies and you know, all of those things. Money is also, though, what fuels the kingdom of light and what fuels the kingdom of darkness. So we're trying to take our money out of fueling the kingdom of darkness, but we've also got to make sure that we deploy money into the kingdom of light, because it takes money to make good things happen, like the work that Preborn Ministries does. Preborn is a ministry that puts ultrasound machines in crisis pregnancy centers across the country, because they know that when a woman in a crisis pregnancy gets an ultrasound, they see the baby, they hear the heartbeat, they are 80 to 90% more likely to choose life for that baby, and then they have a really good shot at choosing eternal life for themselves and potentially their child, because they're going to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ presented to them in one of the most emotional and challenging times in their lives. So, as you know, in the month of May, we are helping Preborn Ministries raise money to fund the light, to fund the good work that they're doing in the kingdom. And we've got Dan Steiner here with us today, the president of Preborn. Dan, welcome. Let's get right to the chase.
Good to be here.
It is good for you to be here. Let's get right to the chase. Why should our listeners support Preborn? And can you give us an update, if you know, where are we in the campaign?
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. Thanks for the opportunity to be here right on the cusp of a day that really memorializes what Financial Issues Stewardship Ministries and Preborn are trying to do throughout the year, but especially this month, and that is make motherhood possible, right? So,
amen.
We're, mama's boy forever here on Mother's Day this Sunday, and that's what we do. I mean, what we do is try to help women realize, against the tide and headwinds of everybody else in their life that's pushing them to abort, to realize that they've got the distinct God-given privilege of, right at that moment, being a mother. And the best way to do that is through the ultrasounds that are underwritten by the faithful listeners over the years now, because of my friend Dan Celia is watching from Glory this morning, that have underwritten literally tens of thousands of mothers the opportunity for that first baby picture to see their baby on ultrasound. And that's what we're doing. It makes a big difference. If you try to talk her out of having an abortion without showing her baby on ultrasound, maybe she'll change her mind 40% of the time. But if she sees that scan and hears that heartbeat, most importantly, and that heartbeat starts at 21 days, 7 times 3, and interesting, it's the first organ that God forms in our body, she will, it just brings tears to her eyes. It's very difficult for her to turn away from that. We have seen some fantastic things that the Lord has done through the ultrasound. I remember one woman that came in, Shana, this is so good, with her boyfriend, and they were very abortion determined. Counseling didn't help, took them back to the ultrasound room, and they said they're kind of looking for a sign from the Lord, that they hadn't told us that, but they told themselves that if they should go through with this or not. And when the ultrasound came up on the screen, there was like a little halo-like structure over the baby's head. It was probably an amniotic fluid, but that's what it looked like. And so they said, oh gosh, the Lord, sanctified this baby. He wants me to choose life. And they did choose life. So what we're doing here makes a big difference. And then we give them maternity clothes and doctor visits and free housing, whatever they need, counseling, walk with them through the whole pregnancy if they need it, so that they have the ability and are empowered to choose life. We're for the mother as well as for the child. And most importantly, giving them an opportunity to have a different matrix upon which to make decisions by giving Christ the lordship of their lives and having biblical values in their lives by sharing the gospel. It's the most important thing to me, is to share the gospel of Jesus.
You know what stands out to me in that story? I love hearing the stories. Because I support Preborn every month, so I get the letters, I get the pictures of the ultrasounds, I get the stories. And, that really helps to drive home what your dollars are actually doing. But you know what's I shouldn't say surprises me, but what stands out to me in that story is that they came in looking for a sign from God. So it seems to me like they maybe already had some type of foundation, but we're living in a world that lies to people. Like, how can a Christian come in and I mean, what would even motivate you to ask the Lord, should I kill my baby or should I not? I mean, and it's the world that we live in. And, I just really love what preborn does.
Yeah, and they've normalized killing babies. I mean, they don't see that as that. They see it as getting rid of their problem. And the reality of the humanity of their baby contradicts all of that and can't be refuted. It's right there in front of their faces. And so that really helps. And we're just so thrilled about the opportunity here to do this. Shana, let me give an update here.
Yeah. Tell us about the cost. What does it cost to do the kind of work that you do?
So it takes about $28, about 45 minutes for an ultrasound session. And that covers the cost of the ultrasonographer or nurse giving the ultrasound scans. So these people have to make a living. We pay them to do this. Some of them volunteer, but most of them are our staff people in our clinic. And so that $28 covers the cost of that nurse's time in giving her a medical free ultrasound. Free because the Financial Issues listener sponsored it. And I'm happy to report that we've sponsored so far over 3,553 ultrasounds this morning. The month's still early. So we're well on our way here. This is so great.
And what's our goal and how can people help?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways you can help. First and foremost is pray for these two ministries that are represented on the broadcast, both preborn, but also Financial Issues Stewardship Ministries. Preborn couldn't do this without, as Dan would often say, Dan Celia, the megaphone of financial issues to Christian population here in America that are aware and have the opportunity at a very low threshold, $28, can't get two people that fed at McDonald's for that these days for Bidenomics. Anyway, but you can save a life for $28. Literally 80% of the time, they'll change their mind. We're trying to underwrite 5,000 of these, and for every ultrasound that is underwritten, for every $5,000, 5,000 ultrasounds, $5,000 that is raised, why that underwrites an ultrasound machine. So basically 178 ultrasound scans triggers a machine that's given to the centers throughout the United States. And we have a goal to place 100 machines this year in our clinics across, just put one in Maui, Hawaii, where they had the fires. And so we've got, centers just throughout, there's like 2,800 pregnancy centers throughout America, and most of them are hand-to-mouth kind of clinics that don't have the ability to get the sophisticated medical technology. And I mean, the machines for Maui, we're putting in a higher grade machine to get a lot of later term pregnancies there. And so that's like a $30,000 machine.
Wow.
We need to pay.
How much does the average machine cost?
Yeah, it's about $15,000.
So we have a generous donor that we raise the money to pay for the ultrasounds, right? So for every, $5,000 or so that we raise, that pays for the ultrasounds. And every time we get to those benchmarks, that donor is going to buy an ultrasound machine up to 100. And for every dollar that we raise for preborn, that donor is going to make a contribution to Financial Issues. So, Dan, we appreciate you so much. We thank you for being here today. Folks, I hope that you will go to financialissues.org, click on that preborn banner, and make your donation today. You'll learn all about, once you get over to that link, you'll learn all about the good work that Preborn Ministries does, and it makes it super easy to contribute. So we thank you. We thank Dan for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have him on the program, and he always has such great information to share with us. And I think it's important that as we're funding the light, we do some due diligence and make sure that we're giving money to the right kind of organizations. And Preborn, there couldn't be a better one than Preborn. So make that donation today. Help Preborn, help Financial Issues, expand the megaphone. Folks, we got to take a break and bid you farewell if you're listening to The Short Show, but stay tuned.
Here at Financial Issues, we are all about standing on the truth, and specifically standing on the truth of God's Word. As you all know today, folks, as we sit, Israel stands at war against its enemy, the Muslim terrorist invader Hamas. Israel is fighting for peace. Hamas is fighting for control and for domination. We want you all to know unequivocally that we are committed to the survival and flourishing of God's covenant people in Israel. We stand with Israel here at FISM, and we invite you to do the same. You know, folks, the bond between a mother and her child during pregnancy and childbirth lays the foundation for a lifelong connection characterized by love, nurturing, and mutual support. And we're asking you to help us create that bond between an abortion-minded mother and her child by giving life through preborn, giving that gift of life. During the month of May, help us place 100 ultrasound machines that will save babies over and over and over again. Go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that. But we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
And we're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
The miracle of carrying a child creates a unique bond between a mother and her unborn baby. She feels the baby's movements and responds to their needs even before birth. Help create that bond between an abortion-minded mother and her unborn child by giving the gift of life through preborn. During the month of May, you can bless your mom for Mother's Day by giving to Preborn on your mother's behalf. For $28, you can sponsor an ultrasound scan that will enable an abortion-minded woman to hear the heartbeat of her baby. 90% of the time, that sound will change a woman's mind and cause her to keep their baby. Give the gift of life to the woman that gave you life by sponsoring an ultrasound. Go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM. You can help an abortion-minded mother receive discipleship, encouragement, and the strength needed to have her baby.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for hanging with us. We want to send a shout out to all of our CSN listeners. We just passed I believe it's the 1 year mark now of our debut on CSN. Is that right, Seth?
Yeah, that's correct, Shana. I've been there 1 year and 10 days now. So it's been good. Yeah, it's been a great time. We love our CSN audience and so grateful for so many of you becoming partners in the last year as well. It's awesome.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And if any of you listen on NRB TV, we're going to be debuting on there just next month. So be in prayer for us as we embark on that. So we're bringing on. We know that many of the CSN listeners now have a pretty good feel for who we are and what we do, and we're going to be introduced to a whole new audience. So. We're going to be doing some refreshers, some back to basics. And I think it's even good for me just to remember, the basics of who we are, why do we exist, because we can get caught up in all of the financial data. Yeah. And it's really a good thing to remember that the reason that our ministry even exists at all is, and you've heard us talking about both of them today, defunding darkness, being biblically responsible, choosing a biblically responsible investment strategy, and funding the light. deploying our dollars into the kingdom of light to help ministries like Preborn push back against darkness. So
yeah, Shana, you're exactly right. It's always good to go back to the basics. I feel like I think about that a lot with the gospel. You know, when I teach gospel truths to my kids, you know, Josiah's going to be 2. It's a good reminder for me because I need that foundational truth too. You know, I'm an adult, but I still need it. You know, so with biblically responsible investing, we're always reminding ourselves of what really matters, and I think it's really good, you know, to do that from time to time.
Yeah, you know, Jesus talks about, you know, we must come into the kingdom as little children.
Yeah,
so we can never forget the truths that we learn as children.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the partners, we do have a partner conference call coming up next week. That's one of the benefits that you get as a partner when you pay $132, not a month, but a year. You get access to our buy list, our sell list, you know, all of those benefits that you have, the asset allocation models and the partner conference calls. So we hope that if you have any questions, you know, maybe you're a new partner and you're just trying to get started in the strategy, or maybe you're an existing partner and have questions about some of the instructions that we've issued lately, some of the sell orders or things like that. Send your question to pat@financialissues.org. Now, you do have to be a partner to get in on that partner conference call, but I really want to keep it relevant. I really want to speak to what's on the minds of the partners because that conference call is for the partners. So, you know, we talk about things on the air. We don't have enough time sometimes to get into some of the details. We share with the partners what's happening with the ministry and a little bit of a behind the scenes peek at what we're doing with analytics, why we're making some of the changes that we're making, so on and so forth. So we hope that you'll tune in. And if you can't tune in at noon Central Time next Wednesday, May the 15th, you will be able to listen to the recording because it's typically posted up to our partner side of the website within an hour or two of the call being actually finished. Well, the major indices rose yesterday as the Dow looked to add to its winning streak. And by the closing bell yesterday, the Dow was up 0.85%, the S&P up a hair over 0.5%, and the NASDAQ up just a hair over 0.25%. And so for the last week, it looks like the markets have shaken off its recent little slump. The Dow for the week is looking to end, if it ended where it ended yesterday, up 1.83%. So we could see somewhere near a 2% increase in the Dow this week. S&P, very similar, 1.87 in the positive week to date. And the NASDAQ up over 1.33%. The 10-year hovering right below the 4.5%. The markets this morning have opened in positive territory, about 0.4%, looks like on all three stock indices, in the green about 0.4%. And the Dow is pushing for its 8th day of the most recent winning streak that we've seen. Well, let's get to, we do have some calls in the queue. It is Rapid Fire Friday. If you've got a question, 610-363-1110. We've got Jeff calling from North Carolina. Hi, Jeff. You're live on Financial Issues.
Good morning, Shana. Happy
Good
Friday.
morning.
Hey, Jeff.
I have recently, I've been a member for a while, and long story short, the Timothy funds, I noticed at one point, I think they're the C shares, they were loaded. It was like 5.5, and now you're suggesting the I funds, which is wonderful because through Fidelity it's $49.95. Is that a one-time fee when I buy those I shares, or is there a maintenance fee along with that? Obviously, there's not a commission, which is really good.
Yeah, so the iShares are what's called institutional shares, and they are supposed to be only available to clients who use a financial advisor, because typically financial advisors that are fee-based charge a management fee, so they don't want to, double dip them, so they strip out some of the fees there. But it has come to our attention that some of these brokerages are offering the iShares, so if you can get them, that's good. I'm not aware of how every single brokerage firm handles the iShares.
Right.
So I know what they're intended for. So you really have to check with your brokerage firm. It sounds to me like the $49.95 is just a transaction fee. So
I think it is. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, for smaller purchases, folks might be better off in an A share, just paying the upfront commission. If that upfront commission is less than that $49.95 fee, but typically what happens if it's a transaction fee, it'll happen just whenever you make a transaction. So like a purchase, I don't know if do you know if they do it on the sell transaction as well?
No, I haven't tried that yet. I don't.
Okay. But yes, iShares do have, all mutual funds have internal costs, even the so-called free, no load mutual funds. They're not exactly free. There are internal costs. But what you see is that because there's a cost they have to pay the fund managers. So rather than picking all of your own individual securities, when you buy a mutual fund or an ETF, you're turning that work over to the fund managers, so they have to get paid. There's transaction costs, still for the firms to execute their strategies, and cost of printing statements, and just internal costs that mutual fund companies have. So there are going to be some internal expenses. They're lowest in the iShares. They're highest in the C shares, because with the C shares you don't typically pay an upfront commission. Now you do pay a deferred sales charge to get out of the C shares if you hold them less than 13 months. And then with the A shares, you pay an upfront commission with a lower internal cost than the C share. So, and the I shares have the lowest.
Statement? Is that listed when you look it up, Fidelity, whatever? They have a listing of everything you want to know about the stock. But I guess, is it hidden in there somewhere, the fee, or?
The best place to find it is probably in the prospectus. So if you just go to the Timothy Plan website and look at their prospectus, you can see all of the charges broken down for C shares, A shares, and I shares.
Right. And on the call letters for a teachable moment, is it true, Timothy Plan, for an international share, it would have an I in the call letters? Because it appears to be. Or is that just a coincidence?
No, IN is for industrials. So the Timothy is going to have an MF call number. Well, folks, we are coming up on a break here. We're coming up on the Ag Report, actually. We're going to hear from Craig Halgert. Then we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to be coming back with more financial issues. If you've got questions, get them queued up now, 610-363-1110.
This is Craig Halgard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for May 10th. Well, at 11 a.m. today, Central Time, we're going to have the latest USDA supply and demand report. Now, the May report has provided some fireworks at times in the past, so it's going to be interesting to see if there is going to be any surprises in this one. Yesterday, corn was lower for the third day in a row as favorable weather outlook pressured prices. July corn ended the day 2 cents lower at $4.56.5. Soybean values fell sharply as the market became relieved that Brazil's losses due to flooding were not as great as had been feared. That, coupled with improved planting picture for the U.S., sent prices lower. When the closing bell rang, July beans were 19.25 cents lower at $12.08.5. Wheat markets ended the day with slight gains as the trade tries to determine the amount of frost damage to the Russian winter wheat crop. Now, Russian authorities released an announcement that some crop areas are going to be replanted as a result of frost damage, and that was supportive to prices. Minneapolis July wheat ended a penny higher at $7.03 3/4. Kansas City rose by 3.25 cents to close at $6.51 3/4, and went Chicago 3.5 cents higher at $6.37.5. Cotton futures gave back roughly half of the previous day's gains. When the market closed, July futures were down 146 points, ending the day at 78.60. Livestock futures were all retreating yesterday. June live cattle were 52.5 cents lower at $175.95 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle dropped by $1.35 to settle at $251.05 per hundred. And we had June lean hog futures a buck lower, ending the day at $97.72.5 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures continued their upward momentum. When the closing bell rang yesterday, we had June futures another 18 points higher as they ended the day at 20.36. Well, this has been Craig Haugard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
Throughout the month of May, FISM is partnering with Preborn to fund the light by providing 100 ultrasound machines to pro-life centers around the country. Now, how can you contribute? Well, for as little as $28, you can provide an ultrasound scan to an abortion-minded woman in crisis. And when that woman hears the heartbeat of her baby, she will choose life. Get this, 90% of the time. It's remarkable. And guess what? With the help of a donor match, for every 200 scans donated, that's for a net value of $5,600, Preborn Ministries will be gifted an ultrasound machine to place at a clinic in need. Each machine has the potential to impact hundreds of thousands of mothers' choices. Preborn also offers additional support to mothers in need and presents the gospel to every mother who comes into their clinics, knowing that salvation is the greatest gift that can be given to a mother and her child. So go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM.
Samuel Case, news anchor with FISM News, sits down to read real comments from real viewers.
You know, I tend not to read social media comments, so this is kind of a big deal for me. I'm kind of nervous, but we're going to see how it goes. It's not George. Thanks. It's been a while since I've watched real news. I kind of have a suspicion your name actually is George, but, you know, regardless, thanks so much. We really do strive to be as authentic, real, and professional as we possibly can be. So we really do appreciate that you're picking up on that. And this one's from Echo Pixel. Keep spreading truth. Will do, Echo. Love this. It's just the news, no spin. It'd be nice if all the news was this way, honestly. Just all the facts and no biases. Sadly, that's a pipe dream, though. If you don't like what other news outlets are doing and you like what we're doing, you can always follow us on FISMnews.tv. That's our website. You can also follow us on social media and by downloading the FISM app as well. The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. It's Rapid Fire Friday. Our phone lines are open. If you want to get your call queued up to 610-363-1110, you will be first caller in the queue, and we are in the last segment of the day today. So if you have a question, you need to get your call queued up in the next, I would say, minute and a half to 2 minutes if you want to get in today. 610-363-1110.
That's right.
Well,
don't be shy.
That's it.
Hey, Shana, speaking of which, I forgot. I'm sorry. I went the whole show without doing this, but happy Mother's Day to you and to Darlene and to Yvonne and all the mothers listening out there. Appreciate
absolutely.
You guys. Yeah, for
absolutely.
sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah. It'll be a good time.
Although I don't think you really get a Mother's Day celebration until you're, we've got my mother-in-law on Saturday, my mother on Sunday. And
absolutely. And you're still, you're still being a mom, so you still got kids to clean up after and all that stuff. But yeah, just know that you're loved and appreciated. And all of you mothers out there, happy Mother's Day to you all. It's great.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Shana, we had a question that came in that I think would make for a good teachable moment.
Okay.
Just this idea of concerning retirement, achieving that consistent income after your days are over. So you remember Dan always used to say there's no greater asset you have than the ability to earn an income. I remember him saying that all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. And for us in the workforce, like that's easy for us to fulfill that because it's just get a job and work hard. But someday we're not going to be able to do that, or maybe we won't want to. So having that consistent income is going to be vital. So the first question I have for you is, for those of us who are still in the workforce, what are some of the most basic foundational things that we can do to plan for that income in the post-employment years, like equity investing, real estate? What are some things we could do?
Well, the first thing that you have to master is to live within your means, because if you don't live within your means, you're not going to have anything extra. You probably won't think you are able to give, which is not a great habit to get in right off the bat. It's good to give God back what is His. I mean, it all is His, but give God back at least the 10% that that we're called on to show our love and devotion for God, and to show that we can be obedient and to be disciplined. So you have to live at least on 90% of your income, and then you got to think that the government's going to confiscate another, depending on how much money you make, at least another 10 to 30% or more. So now
legal
you're down
thievery, as we call it, right?
Yeah.
Pirating.
So now you're down even further, and then you have to try to save some money for the future if you think that, if you're even going to be able to make a decision later on that you don't want to work any longer. So you're going to have to be able to set some money aside. So you're really looking at, not even living off of 80% of your money. If you can live off of 50 to 60% of what you're bringing in, then you're going to be able to, live a really comfortable, or at least have a comfortable financial, emotional outlook, because, you've got to pay taxes. You really should tithe, and you really have to save for the future if you ever think that you're going to have a retirement. So one of the things that you're doing whenever you first start is you're trying to grow a base. A lot of times that's referred to as a principal. So you're putting money away, you're investing that money, you're trying to get the very best return that you can get, and you're trying to build up a principal, because one day it is that principal, that savings, that is going to be invested probably differently whenever you reach retirement, that will help you to generate income.
Shana, that's awesome. Speaking of retirement, I was going to ask some more questions, but we got a call coming in the queue on that very topic. Kelly from Texas is calling about asking what to do with his 401k. Kelly, good morning. You're on Financial Issues with Shana. Hey, Kelly, are you with us? Maybe we'll come back to Kelly in just a moment here, Shana. I'm not hearing Kelly there, so I'm going to put him on hold and ask another question here while we're talking about retirement. So, Shana, what about the first place that an average employee should look to start putting money so we can have that security down the road? What's the first thing that we should do?
Well, the first thing that you should do is make sure that you have an emergency fund, because you don't want to have to, you don't want to start a company plan and then have to try to take money out of that, because then you're going to be penalized and lose even more of it. So build up your emergency account for short-term needs, and also make sure that your family's taken care of. You should... if you have a young family and you have a lot of years to work and you don't have really any savings yet, you need to make sure that you have some life insurance in place, so that if you die early, your family is taken care of, even though you didn't have the opportunity to save a lot of money over your working lifetime. So once you've covered those two bases, then you should look at your employer-sponsored plan, but only if they match. So they're going to make it easy. They're going to allow you to take money out directly out of your paycheck before you even see it, before it hits your bank account. They're going to send it to an investment account for you and match. So the reason that I say only if they match is because most employer plans don't have any biblically responsible investment options other than maybe cash or fixed income. And those are going to be, if you're young, those are probably the investments that you don't really need a lot of, because as a young person, you really want to get the growth types of investments. But, the funds that they offer and the plans typically don't screen for biblically responsible activity. So you're not really going to have great options there. So participate, get your match, and then look to other types of accounts that you can self-direct, that you can be in control of, and choose to be biblically responsible with.
Awesome. Looks like we got that call back from Kelly here, Shana. Kelly, let's try again, brother. Good morning. You're on Financial Issues with Shana.
Well, I'm 60 years old, and I was a late starter in trying to get a 401k or a retirement. I've got about $175,000 in a 401k, and I'm looking to retire and possibly get on Social Security at 62 and a half. And I don't know what to do with all my 401k is in company stock. It's a major department store, and it's doing well now. I don't know what to do to keep it safe when I get ready to get on Social Security. And then when can I start taking money out?
Yeah, so you may be able to check with your company now. A lot of 401k plans will allow you to do what's called an in-service withdrawal at age 50. Usually it's 55, where they basically just allow you to roll that money into an individual retirement account. And that way you have more investment options, and you can choose to be biblically responsible. It's what I was just talking about there. I would immediately recommend that you diversify that account. So it's a very risky thing to have all of your assets concentrated in one company. A major department store, even, especially if we start to see the economy slow, which we're seeing signs of, that discretionary spending tends to slow down. That does tend to impact those types of investments. So I would look to diversify right away. Since you are 60, the rule to avoid penalties, tax penalties, you have to be 59 and a half to take distribution. So you've already kind of checked that box. The thing that I think you want to make sure of, though, is if you decide to retire at 62 and a half and get on Social Security, you have to know that you're taking a substantial sort of penalty in your Social Security. If you wait until full retirement age, or even better, wait until age 70 to start taking that, you see over a 30% increase in your monthly income. But if that Social Security and the other sources of income that you have for retirement are well more than you actually need to make ends meet right now, then I guess it would be an okay decision to start to retire. You just have to keep in mind that inflation has run rampant lately. In the last 3 years, life cost about 20% more than it did just 3 years ago. And I don't see that changing. Although inflation has slowed some, we have some really strong demographic trends, or economic trends in this country. Our government is spending way more than it brings in. That's going to be a problem for inflation longer term. So if Social Security, if getting on Social Security, you're barely making ends meet, I would say, consider postponing retirement, because you're going to need a good bit of wiggle room. You're going to have to invest that money that you have in your 401k. You're going to have to balance safety and growth. You can't just put it in a money market getting 5% for it to be safe and expect the kind of growth that you're going to need to keep up with inflation. So, I would really look at doing some retirement projections just to see what that looks like for the future before you make that decision.
Hey, Kelly, I'm going to hop in here and say we're almost at the end of the show, so we're going to have to let you go here. But would you please call back if you have any more questions, brother? Appreciate that so much. Shana, that was great, because that was actually the next question I was going to ask, and you just answered it with Kelly, is the rules we should be aware of regarding some of those withdrawals. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. Well, let's wrap up with our stewardship verse of the day, 1 Timothy 6:8. If we have food and covering, with these we shall be content.
Shana, this was a verse we did in Bible study this morning. We talked about how God never promises to give us our wildest dreams, but he does promise to give us what we need, not because we deserve it, but because he's gracious. Good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that verse comes right between the reminder that we come into this world with nothing and we leave with nothing, and the other bookend of that is that the revelation that loving money will lead us into temptation and away from God. So let me just encourage you as we leave for the week, honor your mother this weekend over Mother's Day. Spend some time with her, give her a call, do something, and spend Sunday in worship with God's Word. And come back next week for more financial issues, because Lord willing, we're going to be here to remind you time's getting short, the Master's coming back, and we want to help you be found a good and faithful steward with all that he's given you, because you will be tested on it. Have a wonderful weekend of worship, and we'll see you next week on Financial Issues. Find out more about our ministry and make that preborn donation at financialissues.org.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.